Hey everybody, welcome back. We're going to do paper cutting part 3, okay? So if you did something like this in the last part, then you're ready to go. And while you don't necessarily need to have done this to do this part of the project, if you've already done one paper cut, it'll make some of this next part a little quicker and easier, and we'll get going on that. So this one, I want to do something more like a stained glass window. Now you could be pretty complicated if you want, but let's do something simple for our first time. If you have a nice big piece of 12 by 18 construction paper, then you can fold it in half and it'll be 9 by 12. And then you won't have to worry about the other part, which is taping the paper together. So if you don't have a big sheet of paper, then get a couple of sheets of paper and tape them together. Okay, so I'll show you how to do that here in a moment. So we're going to do something like just a simple cross design for this stained glass window. We'll make it a little bit easy to start with. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, on all these stained glass window designs, it's probably not a bad idea to just put a border on there. And if we're going to go ahead and do a cross design, then we're just going to draw the cross into the middle of the design. Okay? And then we can make this simple by just cutting out a few shapes. Okay? So I'm going to draw this so that I only have these shapes that I want to cut out for the cross. So we're going to take out this piece and 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 this piece. Now if you wanted to make it more complicated and turn these into separate shapes, you could do something like that, and you could have a lot of smaller shapes in there, but for the example and for time, let's just do it this way. Okay, now if you remember, okay, last time we talked about 2 different ways that you could get into the middle of your paper. Okay, one way was trying to get into there with a hole punch and just reach in and get far enough through the border. So depending on how thick you made your border, that way might work pretty well. Okay, the other way would be to use your X-Acto knife and a mat and make a slit or a cut into the paper. Okay, the other way you could really do it, okay, if you don't have either of those things, is you could fold the paper a little bit, okay, and just make a snip in there. But every time that you do something like that, you're going to crease your paper a little bit, but it shouldn't be too big of a deal. So you can always fold the paper up and take your scissors and make a little cut, and that's one other way that you can get into the center of those shapes. And so all we're going to do then is we're going to cut both layers of paper at the same time, so we get this double effect. Okay, and we're going to do this because we want it to look the same from the outside and the inside. Okay, even though if you put letters or words or something like that, it would be kind of reversed, but we're going to kind of work with that. So what I want to do is just cut out these shapes for this cross design. So I'm going to do that. I think you've got the idea, especially if you did part 2. You know what's going on here. You can go in from the top or the bottom and cut out all these shapes. And since these are just rectangular shapes, it's not going to take a whole lot of time, but I'm still thinking you don't want to watch me do the whole thing. Okay, so I'm back and I've got it all cut out now, and I'm using this one that I taped together. And if you didn't see what I did there, then I'll just show you again. Okay, what I did was put 3 pieces of tape, 1, 2, and 3, across the top to tape those 2 pieces of paper together, because I'm guessing that most of you don't have the big 12 by 18 sheets of paper at home. You've got smaller stuff that you're working with. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a little sandwich with this, and we're going to keep the part that has the drawing on it on the inside. And then what we want to do is fill this with plastic, okay, or a colored cellophane. Now, you might not have this at home. You might have some tissue paper. You can try it, but tissue paper doesn't show through the color the same way that you would think it would. But you could put it on some white paper, so we'll try a couple of things and see. But you can get this colored cellophane at, you know, art stores or Hobby Lobby or something like that, or maybe even find some colored cellophane in rolls in the wrapping paper department. But I'll show you what it is, and then we'll use it to put some color into our stained glass window. Okay, so here's the colored cellophane that I'm talking about. It's just a sheet of thin plastic material that has some color to it, and then you can use that to let the light transmit and show through some color. So it comes in lots of different colors, and if you let the colors lay on top of each other, they'll kind of mix and make other colors too. So you can let that kind of happen. So we're just going to cut a few pieces to the shape and the size that we need, and then we'll tape those into place, and that'll be kind of good enough to make our stained glass window. So I'm just going to put this here, and I'm just going to try and do it by hand at first, okay, and we'll see how that works. Okay, again, you might use could use a knife to do this, but this will work okay. If you want to, you can grab a Sharpie and then you can mark out the size that you want with a Sharpie. You won't be able to write on this with anything but a permanent marker, and then you can actually cut along the lines if you want to for that kind of a thing. And you want it to be small enough that it fits into place, and then I think the simplest thing to do is just to put some tape in there. Now, if you don't want the tape to show, you might have to take a piece of tape and cut smaller pieces of tape from it, okay? So you could do that and make sure that the tape is thin enough that it doesn't show up. The other thing you could do is actually put tape all over this if it's clear tape, and then it'll actually give some more texture to the actual cellophane and make it look like a different kind of glass. So there's different kinds of glass. Some are more perfectly transparent, and then some have some texture to them so that they don't transmit the image quite as clearly. You could always crumple this a little bit, and then it would give kind of that cracked look to the glass too if you crumpled it up. So there's a few things you could do just to play with this idea and get things into place. So I'm going to do the same thing here. I think I'll use the Sharpie. That seems like a good idea. We'll draw a mark on there so we know the size that we want it to be. Let's try this scissors, see how it cuts. Okay, you're probably going to have a pretty good sharp scissors in order to make these cuts work, because this stuff is kind of thin, okay? So if your scissors isn't very sharp, it's probably going to want to bend the paper, and it seems like this one is not super sharp today, but I know this one is. So we'll put those things in place and then tape those things all ready to go. So I think it's not a bad idea to trim those. We'll try to hide this tape for the most part so that it doesn't show up in the final picture. Cool. All right, so let's close this up and see what we've got going on right now, okay? So far we've got a couple of pieces in there, and that's working okay. So we'll see what we can do. I'll add a few more to this, and then we'll glue it together, and we'll be pretty much finished up. So this is a pretty simple design overall. You could definitely be more complicated with it, but let's start with that. Okay, so I'm almost finished with it. I just wanted to show you this one thing. On my cutting mat, it is a whole lot easier to cut this cellophane with an X-Acto knife or a utility knife. So if you have one at your house and your parents are cool with you trying that out, or if they want to help you with it, that would be good. And that will save you a little bit of time. It's just a little bit easier to cut the shapes. So now I've got most of these all taped into place. So I'm just going to finish this last one up. And then I'm going to show you a couple of other things too, just so you have an idea of what the other looks are that you can get. Okay, so we talked about kind of crumpling the paper to get that textured look. You can crumple up the cellophane to get that textured look. The other thing you could do is put a bunch of tape together as you tape it down. So right now everything's fairly clear, okay, and clean to look through. But we could, if we wanted to, use several pieces of tape and kind of just overlap them on top of each other, and then that would give us a whole different look. It might slow down the transmission of the light through there a little bit, okay? It won't allow as much light through, okay? So it won't be quite as bright, but you could add that tape into that yellow area, and then you get more of a matte finish to the look of the tape. So you'd have a little bit more of a texture on there. Ooh, let's see if this works. Hey, how that's kind of cool looking there through the document camera. But you can see it allows the light through really well through the cellophane by itself, and you can see me, it's very transparent, and then you can't see as well through where all of the tape is. Okay, and it takes some of the color out of it as well. So it might be something cool to try if you like that look. The other thing that I did try was trying it with some tissue paper, which you might be more likely to have than this colored cellophane, and that's going to give a similar look to having the tape on there, because the tissue paper is not going to transfer light through as well as the cellophane, so it won't be quite as bright. So let's clear this mat out of the way for a second, and then we'll glue this all up and finish this thing up. Alright, cool. So we're back. So here's a piece of the tissue paper, and you can kind of see if I hold it up to the document camera that it doesn't really transmit light through it. It's not very transparent at all. So having that be part of the color here would work, okay, but it's not going to allow the light to shine through as well as the cellophane. So you could try it out. It might be better just to use that and have it be part of the color, but it'll be a lot more like just using regular colored paper. It might transmit a little bit of light through, but it's not going to be the same as using the colored cellophane. So now that I have this all done, I'm just going to glue everything together, okay? It might be easier for you to see where the lines are by using the side that doesn't have all of the tape on it. So I'm going to flip that around here, and then I've got this piece here that doesn't have all of the tape on it, and I'm going to use that part to help guide where I put my glue. Okay, the outside edge will be the most important because it'll have less tape on it. the glue will probably adhere and stick better to the paper than it will to the tape. But a little bit on all of those edges should be pretty good for you. And then we'll fold that up closed and try to get it lined up as well as we can. Okay. So we'll let that dry. If you want that to be as a window, fine. If you want to grab your crayon and sign your name to it, you can. If you don't want to, you don't have to. I think most of the artists in the Middle Ages didn't sign their artwork, so maybe you don't want to either. But there we go. We have kind of a stained glass window design using our paper cutting and our clear cellophane, and you can see through it except where I put that extra tape on there, and it kind of blocks things out a little bit. So pretty cool. Alright, well, I hope you guys enjoyed that. Hope you found it kind of interesting, a little bit challenging. We'll see you guys later for another project. Bye bye.